Hi, my name is Nalan. I'm 30 years old. And tonight I just learned that money can't buy you a seat at a table where love was never on the menu. If you've ever gone all in on a grand gesture, one so big you thought nobody could ignore it, stick around, because what happened to me might feel painfully familiar. And while you're here, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Seeing all the different cities and countries always reminds me that we're a lot less alone than we think. New Year's Eve in Oakland is supposed to crackle with possibility. Fireworks over the harbor, champagne bubbles, countdowns, resolutions. I had folded every ounce of that electricity into a single reservation at the Palisade Club, the kind of place with a private elevator, monogrammed butter knives, and paintings your high school art teacher would faint over. I'd wired them my entire year-end bonus to secure the Roosevelt Salon, a chandeliered room that seats 12. All 12 chairs were meant for the Whitakers. Randall, Elise, their son Kyle, their daughter Serena, plus spouses, plus Grandpa Harold. And me, of course, the foster kid temporarily merged into their lineage like a sticky note someone forgot to peel off. I booked a suite at the Marriott Regency downtown so I could get dressed without hearing my empty apartment echo back every doubt. The suite smelled faintly of cedar and new carpet, as if even the air was freshly ironed. Draped across the bed lay a charcoal suit in a garment bag. Custom, Loro Piana fabric. It cost more than the 1999 Honda Civic I drove through college. I thought of that suit as armor, but when I slid into it, my reflection looked like a child playing banker. The tie kept slipping, the collar scratched. Under the perfect fit, my heart was breakdancing. I'd rehearsed the night 100 times. Elise would glide in, see the floral centerpieces I'd ordered, white orchids because she claims colored flowers clash with her complexion, and soften. Randall would taste the single-barrel bourbon I flew in from Kentucky and finally look at me like an equal, maybe even like a son. Serena would post a grinning selfie with me to her 200,000 followers. Kyle would brag to his crypto buddies that his brother closed the Palisade Club for one night only. In every rehearsal, the applause came at dessert, when the pastry chef rolled out a dark chocolate croquembouche shaped like a clock striking midnight. I pictured the moment their eyes widened, the warm rush of belonging washing over my bones. That feeling was the real thing I'd paid for. My phone buzzed just as I tightened the Windsor knot. Elise's name lit up on the screen. My stomach dove. She only calls for one of two reasons, to accept a favor or to cancel plans. I answered with manufactured cheer. "Nalan, sweetheart," she cooed. "I'm devastated to say this, but Randall woke up with the worst stomach virus. He can't even stand. We're quarantining him in bed. We'd never forgive ourselves if we infected you or the staff." The lie arrived lacquered in motherly concern, polished like her pearl earrings. I swallowed. "Is there anything you need? I can bring soup." "Oh, heavens no. You enjoy that gorgeous reservation. Take some colleagues. Really, darling, celebrate." She hung up before I could question her further. The suite fell silent except for my heartbeat ricocheting off the walls. The vision, the applause, the dessert, the acceptance, snapped like cheap glass. I stared at myself in the mirror, a lone figure in expensive wool, holding an itinerary that suddenly felt like a ransom note to my own dignity. 12 months of therapy with Grandpa's insistence flashed across my mind. "Data, Nalan," Dr. Gibbons always said. "Collect data about how people actually show up." Well, here was the final data point, delivered right on schedule. My usual move would be to order room service pizza and pretend the whole thing never happened. Maybe you've done that too, shrugged off a wound before the bleeding even started. Instead, a strange calm descended. I slipped the reservation folder into my briefcase, grabbed the velvet-lined gift basket packed with imported cheeses and 65% cacao truffles, and headed for the door. Outside, fog hugged the bay like a secret. I coaxed my sedan through the quiet streets toward the Whitakers' tree-lined cul-de-sac. Every passing block felt like peeling back another layer of a lie I'd let grow roots. I parked beneath a leafless magnolia 2 houses down and killed the engine. Their windows glowed golden, curtains wide open as if stage lights had been rigged for my arrival. Through the bay window, Randall stood by the grand piano, nowhere near dying of a virus. He was swirling amber liquor in a Waterford tumbler, laughing so hard his shoulders shook. Elise glided from dining room to kitchen in a silver sequined gown. Kyle was recounting a story, hands animated, while Serena filmed him on her phone. A roasted turkey big enough to sink a tiny country sat at the center of their 12-seat table. My table. My own lungs refused to take in air. Every instinct screamed to sprint back to the car, but my feet stayed planted in the grass. Apparently betrayal is a glue. The gift basket slipped from my fingers with a muted rustle. Cellophane cracked, the only sound in a night gone vacuum silent. Something inside me broke too, but it wasn't loud. It was a quiet, seismic shift, like continents deciding they'd stood in the wrong place for too long. Have you ever watched the truth unfold one undeniable frame at a time and realized you've been the only one in the theater? What did it feel like for you? I'd love to hear. I forced myself to walk back to the car, deliberate steps, no running. Once inside, I dialed Grandpa Harold. When he answered, I couldn't form a sentence, only one word scraped out. Grandpa! Silence stretched, thick and buzzing. They did it again. Stay put, he said, voice gravel but steady. It's time. He didn't ask what had happened. He already knew. In that instant, I understood something that would guide everything that followed. People who truly love you can read the blank spaces between your words. Remember that lesson the next time someone claims they didn't notice your pain. Headlights appeared 10 minutes later. Grandpa's vintage pickup idled beside me like an old guard dog. He climbed into my passenger seat, boots muddy from the farm. His hand found my shoulder. No awkward patting, just weight and warmth. You ready? I wasn't sure what ready meant. Ready to scream? Ready to cry? Instead of answering, I opened the glove compartment and retrieved the valet envelope that contained the Palisade Club reservation and receipt. Evidence, I guess, of how badly I still wanted in. I tore it in half, then into confetti, dropping the pieces onto the dash. Grandpa watched, eyes reflecting dashboard light, saying nothing. He reached into his coat and pulled out a shoebox so battered the lid was held by a single loop of twine. It smelled faintly of cedar and gasoline, like it had ridden shotgun through decades of harvest seasons. He set it between us. This is yours, he said. Been yours since your 18th birthday. I'm 30, I whispered. Took you 12 years to need it. That's okay. Open it when you're ready to stop asking them for what they'll never give. My fingers hovered over the twine, but I couldn't, not yet. Grandpa, why tonight? Why bring it now? Because tonight you saw the proof with your own eyes, he said. Proof beats hope every time. His words snapped something taut inside me. I turned the key, engine rumbling to life, and pulled away from the curb. The Whitacres' glowing windows receded in the rear view until they were just another set of distant lights. We drove without speaking, the shoebox like a bomb on the console. Asphalt blurred, city giving way to highway to the dark ribbon along the waterfront. Eventually, I steered toward Lake Merritt's overlook, the spot where Grandpa once taught me to skip stones and explained that water always finds its level, no matter how often wind or boats disturb it. I killed the engine, and the lake spread before us, black glass stitched with reflections from far-off lampposts. The night air slapped my cheeks awake. I carried the shoebox to a wooden bench, Grandpa trailing a step behind. Hands shaking, I tugged the twine. It snapped. The lid lifted with a sigh of cardboard fibers. Inside, cushioned by decades-old newspaper crossword pages, lay a single heavy envelope. My name, Nolan, written in looping ink I didn't recognize. I glanced at Grandpa. His eyes shone with something deeper than tears. Regret, maybe, or relief that the secret finally had an audience of one. I broke the wax seal. A photograph slid out first, a young woman on a beach at sunset, wind tossing her sandy blonde hair. She looked barely 20, barefoot, laughing at someone outside the frame. Her eyes were my eyes, impossibly blue. Behind the photo, a letter, pages of cream stationery, ink faded but legible. My dearest Nolan, it began. The lake, the wind, Grandpa, the Whitacres, all faded to static as I read. The letter told of a girl named Camille, a musician named Daniel, a family fortune in Denver, a pregnancy called an unfortunate oversight. Camille chose me over money, only to be cut off. She lived out of her car, worked diner shifts, refused to sign adoption papers that stripped her of contact, until a family driver offered a compromise he swore would protect us both. His name was Harold Whitaker. Grandpa cleared his throat, voice small in the dark. I thought Randall and Elise wanted you. I believed they'd love you. I was wrong. The letter ended with a promise. Camille would build a life worthy of her son and search until she found him. Beneath the pages was a neat stack of more envelopes, each stamped, returned to sender, all postmarked Seattle, all addressed to me. 10 years' worth. If you've ever discovered your entire origin story wrapped in someone else's guilt, you understand the disbelief that followed. I felt like an astronaut untethered from the ship, watching home recede into a pinpoint of light. I looked at Grandpa, the man who taught me to ride a bike, to drive a stick, to hammer a nail straight. The ache in his expression forced the question out of me. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was a coward, he said. Because facing my son meant losing him and I wasn't ready. You paid the price, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that right. His confession landed softer than I expected. Anger bubbled, but exhaustion heavier still. Silence settled between us, not hostile, just full. Finally, I folded Camille's letter and placed it back in the envelope. The December wind sliced through my suit, but I barely felt it. "Grandpa," I said, "I need to see her, but first I need them to see me, really see me for the very last time." He nodded almost imperceptibly. Then we start at dawn. A stray firework bloomed across the lake, a premature spark against the night. Somewhere in Oakland, strangers were counting down to a new year. My countdown had already started. The clock was ticking on the version of me who begged for scraps. In 12 hours, I would walk back into the Whitaker house, not as the hopeful foster kid in an ill-fitting skin, but as the rightful owner of my own story. And as the fireworks' reflection rippled across black water, I wondered, what would you do if the people you loved most were built on a lie? Would you burn the bridge or try to mend it plank by plank? I'm still wrestling with that answer. Maybe you are too. The wind picked up, scattering bits of torn reservation across the bench and into the night. For once, I didn't chase the pieces. Some things are better left to drift. If sunrise has a sound, it's the low hiss of a coffee maker working overtime. That's what greeted us in my kitchen a few hours after the shoebox cracked my history wide open. The city was still half asleep, skylines bleeding pink, but the two of us were already hunched over my tiny table like detectives piecing together a cold case, because that's exactly what it was. Grandpa Harold cradled a chipped mug between his hands, eyes bloodshot yet fiercely awake. I'd tossed my suit jacket on the couch and rolled up my sleeves. Every pore seemed to buzz with equal parts fury and clarity. Spread before us was the full archive from the box. Camille's letters sat on my left, 30 neatly dated envelopes, each a yearly heartbeat she'd tried to deliver. On my right, photocopies of bank statements Grandpa had dug out of a safety deposit box just before meeting me last night. A single yellow highlighter lay uncapped between us like a scalpel. Each luminous slash across those statements marked a transaction. Thornfield Family Trust R&E Whitaker Memo, Custodial Support N. Thornfield. Same amount, first of every month, year after year. Totaled up, it was well into 7 figures, money meant to raise and educate the child. A line item treated more like corporate income than love. Grandpa cleared his throat, a gravelly sound that seemed to echo off the bare walls. "I kept copies because I knew someday you'd need proof. Didn't imagine it'd feel like handing over the murder weapon." The statement stung, but I nodded. "Proof beats hope, you taught me that." He gave a sad half-smile. "Wish I'd lived by my own words sooner." I slid Camille's earliest letter toward him. She'd written it the night before my first birthday, pages of scribbled song lyrics and apologies, ending with a promise that she'd come for me when she found stable work. The ink twitched at the edges, evidence of a hand shaking too hard to stay in the lines. Reading it hurt like breathing in ice water, yet I forced myself to trace every loop of her handwriting. Reality was no longer optional. Reality was oxygen. Takeaway moment? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is stop cushioning the fall and look at the concrete underneath. Denial delays nothing. It only stretches the pain across more years. I folded the letter, placed it into a fresh folder labeled primary evidence. Yeah, the analyst in me was back, and powered up my laptop. I'm pulling every document I can find online. Property taxes, college fund paperwork that never existed, anything contradicting their "we did our best" narrative. Grandpa sipped coffee, wincing at its strength. "What's the endgame, kid?" "I'm not filing a lawsuit yet. I'm going to confront them with the data, record everything. If they admit the fraud, maybe the trust can reclaim the money. If they do," I shrugged, "we'll see which district attorney enjoys front-page cases." He nodded slowly but said nothing, face granite. The silence felt heavy until my phone buzzed. "Unknown number, Washington area code," I answered. "Davies Investigations," a deep voice said. "I got a message you needed to talk." "Mr. Davies, this is Nolan Whitaker. Well, Nolan Thornfield, apparently." My breath caught on the new surname, first time saying it aloud. "Camille's son." A pause, then an audible exhale. "Son, I have spent 10 years chasing your shadow, thought I'd hallucinated you." "I need verification," I said. "When did you first locate me and why did you stop?" He launched into the timeline. 8 years ago, his team tracked me to the Whitaker address. A cease and desist letter arrived from a Whiteshoe law firm within 48 hours, accusing Davies of harassment and threatening restraining orders against both him and Camille. They'd attached a psych evaluation, fake, it turned out, claiming contact would destabilize me. Davies sounded equal parts angry and relieved to finally be talking to the real person behind the paperwork. "Can you email me every document?" I asked. "You'll have them before your coffee cools. Also, please let my mother know I've read her letters and I'm safe. I'll reach out soon." When we hung up, Grandpa's shoulders sagged, as if hearing the recap drained what strength he had left. I placed a hand over his. "We'll fix this." He shook his head. "I don't deserve forgiveness, Nolan." "Maybe not, but you're the only family member who gave me the tools to find the truth. Tools matter." That line landed with both of us, weighing guilt against action. If guilt grips you, remember, repentance is a verb, not a feeling. What actions have you taken to mend past mistakes? By mid-morning, my printer spat out 3 stacks, Camille's letters, trust fund transfers, and the legal threats sent to Davies. I highlighted, annotated, and bookmarked like finals week at business school. Grandpa, meanwhile, rummaged through a canvas tote he'd brought. Out came a cassette player, yes, the 90s variety, and a tiny tape marked April 1996. He held it gently. "This might be admissible." He pressed play. A younger herald spoke in hushed tones with a voice I recognized as Randall's. The recording captured them negotiating final adoption logistics. Randall insisted on monthly payments for the child's upkeep, then made a joke about hazard pay. Hearing my foster father's voice describing me like overhead costs sent heat flooding my cheeks. Grandpa's eyes filled, but he let the tape play through. I burned the audio onto my laptop. Evidence plain and damning. We ate lunch standing up, 2 leftover pastries and more coffee, because neither of us could sit still for long. Every time I glanced at Camille's photograph propped against my monitor, oxygen felt cleaner. She looked young, hopeful, like someone who didn't yet know rich families have rules to keep their secrets airtight. I wanted to protect that version of her, even if it existed only in faded ink. By 2 o'clock, Davies' email attachments arrived. Scanned restraining orders drafted but never filed, legal bills itemizing containment of biological mother, and surveillance photos of me at college. Tiny image, 18-year-old me lugging textbooks, oblivious to a telephoto lens. I stared at the pixelated boy who still thought scholarships would buy belonging. The rage that flickered last night roared back full force, but it had edges now, edges sharp enough to carve a plan. Grandpa rummaged again and produced a battered Polaroid of me at 5 years old, freckles across my nose, missing front tooth, clutching a model airplane I'd built. He set it beside Camille's beach photo. 2 kids reaching across time. He whispered, "You always deserved better." I swallowed hard. Let's make sure the next 5-year-old in a situation like mine gets it. That idea sprouted quickly. A foundation, legal help for adoptees. Seed of purpose, watered by righteous anger. Funny how clarity can grow in the ashes of disappointment. The afternoon faded into evening as we organized a war binder. That's what Grandpa called it, half joking. Tabs labeled timeline, financial, legal, emotional impact. Under the last tab, I stuck a single sheet. A typed paragraph explaining how chronic rejection leads to complex trauma, courtesy of Dr. Gibbons' session notes. Even feelings needed to be on the record. At dusk, we stretched our legs on the balcony. Oakland's skyline glimmered, distant sirens blended with gull calls from the estuary. Grandpa leaned on the railing. "Do you worry you'll become like them? Money, power, all that." "Power's neutral," I said. "The person wielding it gives it meaning. They used money to hide the truth. I'm going to use money to shine a floodlight on it." He chuckled, a brief spark in tired eyes. "Told you data mattered." "Data's step 1, step 2 is backbone," I nudged him. "Pretty sure I inherited yours." He looked away, overcome. Sometimes forgiveness is less like a sunrise and more like a dimmer switch inching upward, not bright yet, but brighter. Night settled. We ordered Thai takeout, comfort food from my college cram sessions, and ate straight from cartons while the color printer whirred. I considered filming a video diary but decided some moments deserve no lens. They belong solely to memory and muscle tissue. Remember that when you're tempted to share every heartbreak online, some healing happens offline, unfiltered. When the final page emerged, I packed everything into a slim aluminum briefcase, the kind litigators carry into courtrooms. Grandpa raised an eyebrow. "Symbolic much." "Dramatic effect matters. If they value image, let's use image." We rehearsed questions I'd ask. Why did they refuse contact? Where is the money? Why lie about the stomach flu? Grandpa proposed we end with an offer. Sign a confession, repay the trust, or face criminal charges. I didn't know if I'd follow through, but bluffing only works when you're willing to see it to the end. A sudden thought hit me. We need an impartial witness. Grandpa nodded. I'll call Pastor Lewis. He baptized you. He's still neutral with the family. By 11:00 p.m., the plan looked bulletproof, or at least proof-laden. Yet anxiety crawled under my skin. What if they gaslighted us, accused Grandpa of forging documents, denied everything? I lifted Camille's beach photo. Her eyes seemed to say, the truth doesn't need permission. That calmed me. Before bed, I wrote Camille a short email through Davies. I'm coming soon. Please wait. Reading your letters changed everything. No more details. The confrontation belonged to me and Harold alone. She'd been through enough suspense. Sleep came in bursts. Dreams tangled. Randall counting money over a cradle, Elise shredding letters like confetti, Serena live-streaming my panic for followers. Each time I jolted awake, the briefcase sat on the chair, silent testament that nightmares sometimes retire at daybreak. At 6, I dressed in a navy suit, nothing flamboyant this time, and a simple gray tie. Grandpa appeared in the hallway wearing his last clean flannel, freshly pressed. Figured authenticity is my best attire, he quipped. He tucked the cassette tape into his breast pocket like a medal. We loaded the car. Fog pooled over the Bay Bridge, headlights carving tunnels through the mist. Halfway across, Grandpa broke the quiet. If they beg, if they cry, what then? I listen, I said. Listening isn't agreement, but it's power. Power belongs to the one who can stay present. Lesson learned from years in boardrooms. Anger can roar, but poise negotiates. We met Pastor Lewis in a grocery store parking lot near the Whitakers subdivision. The pastor climbed into Grandpa's truck, clutching a worn Bible and a notepad. He greeted me with the same kind warmth he'd shown back when he taught Sunday school, the warmth that once kept me from bolting out of church. He listened as we laid out the evidence, nodding gravely. Truth is light, Nolan, he said. Some folks prefer darkness because light hurts the eyes, but you're flipping the switch. Driving into the cul-de-sac felt surreal, like stepping into a diorama of my childhood. The magnolia tree still stood, branches skeletal against gray sky. Holiday wreaths hung crooked on doors. It was January 1st, but the neighbors still clung to December sparkle. The Whitaker mansion loomed, all columns and spotless windows. Behind those panes, a family portrait likely greeted guests. Randall in a navy blazer, Elise in cream silk, Kyle and Serena flanking them, and me nowhere in sight. Pastor Lewis placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Ready. I inhaled, exhaled. No, but we're doing it anyway. We climbed the stone steps. Elise's tasteful wreath, silver bells, no red, tinkled in the breeze. I pressed the doorbell. The familiar chime echoed within, the same sound that once summoned me to chores or silence depending on their mood. Footsteps approached. The door swung open. Randall's face registered shock first, then annoyance, then something unreadable as he noticed Pastor Lewis and the briefcase. Elise appeared behind him, lips parted in a question she never voiced. I spoke before anyone else could. Steady, quiet, every word rehearsed and necessary. We need 30 minutes, living room, all of us present. I'll wait while you gather Kyle and Serena. Randall puffed up. This is highly inappropriate. I raised the briefcase an inch. So is fraud 30 minutes. He took in Pastor Lewis' solemn gaze, Grandpa's unflinching stare, the aluminum case glinting like a mirror of consequence. His shoulders slumped ever so slightly. Elise mouthed something, maybe lawyer, but he shook his head. Fine, he muttered. Family room, 10 minutes to assemble. As we stepped inside, the lemon polish scent hit me like a wave of déjà vu. I glanced at Grandpa. He tipped an imaginary hat. Your move, kiddo. And that's where the countdown truly began, not to midnight or to an imagined acceptance, but to the moment a lie meets daylight and finally burns. If you'd been in my shoes, standing on that polished marble floor about to confront the people who shaped your entire identity, what question would you ask first? Think about it, because the question you choose says a lot about what you still need to heal. Randall's voice carried from the hallway, summoning his children. The stage was set. The truth had its foot in the doorway, and this time no one could slam it shut. The Whitakers' family room was as meticulously staged as always. Cream sofas flanking a glass coffee table, a wall-sized abstract painting that had cost more than my first 2 years of college. The gas fireplace set low to create a cozy glow no one actually needed in Oakland's mild winter. I could almost hear Elise rehearsing last night's small talk. Hard to find good staff these days, don't you think? Before she realized tonight's audience wasn't looking for hors d'oeuvres. Kyle shuffled in first, earbuds dangling, annoyance etched across his unshaven face. Serena followed, phone clasped like a talisman, her perfect brows knit in confusion. Randall remained standing, arms folded, while Elise perched on the sofa's edge with the poise of a woman expecting applause for simply existing. Pastor Lewis seated himself on the ottoman near the fireplace, pen and notepad ready. Grandpa stood beside me, one weathered hand resting on the aluminum case, a silent reminder that the evidence and the courage were real. I stayed on my feet. Height helps when you need to level a playing field tilted by years of hierarchy. "Thank you for gathering," I began. My voice rang louder than intended, brittle at the edges, but nobody flinched. "This won't take long if we focus on facts." Elise flashed a brittle smile. "Facts, darling, is this about last night's mix-up? We were devastated." Randall cut her off with a raised hand, an old reflex that once made me shrink. Tonight I didn't. "State your purpose," he said, like a CEO demanding the bullet points. I opened the case and removed 3 folders, sliding them in a neat row across the glass. Timeline, financial, legal. The glass surface reflected gold lettering, an unintended mirror that showed every person staring at their own distorted double. Lesson number 1. Mirrors tell the truth even when people refuse to. I started with the timeline, laying out the adoption's chronology in calm, courtroom cadence. Camille's pregnancy, Harold's offer, the private handover, the monthly payments from the Thornfield Family Trust. I referenced transaction dates, letter postmarks, return-to-sender stamps. I quoted the forged psych evaluation Davies had uncovered, how it depicted me as emotionally unstable to justify cutting off contact. Each sentence felt like striking a match and letting it hover near their carefully varnished facade. Randall tried the first deflection. "Adoptions are complicated. We followed advice from counsel and medical professionals. You were a fragile child." Pastor Lewis looked up from his pad. "Fragile? I taught Nolan in Sunday school. He was sturdy as they come. Who diagnosed otherwise?" Elise's mouth tightened. "Dr. Hartman, pediatric specialist." I slid a sheet across the table. "Hartman retired 15 years ago. Davies interviewed him last week. Signed statement right there. He never evaluated me, never wrote those words." The pastor's pen scratched a note. Serena glanced at Kyle. His face was blank as an unplugged screen. Grandpa cleared his throat, handing over a digital recorder. "You'll want to hear this." He pressed play. Randall's 30-year-younger voice filled the room, joking about hazard pay and how trust fund bobbies don't come cheap. The recording was tinny but unmistakable. Randall's jaw worked, nostrils pinched. "Insight time," and I offered it aloud. "Words you speak in secret have a way of echoing later. Ask yourself, if every private joke became public, could you live with it?" Elise surged to her feet. "This is a witch hunt built on ancient gossip and doctored files. You can manipulate audio easily these days." Kyle finally spoke, slow and wary. "Mom, that sounds like Dad." His tone carried something new, uncertainty, maybe even fear. I pivoted to the financial folder. "Ancient gossip doesn't leave a paper trail through 3 different banks." I pointed to the highlighted statements. "Custodial support and Thornfield. $32,000 every month, index-linked. Over 3 decades, that's nearly $12 million. Serena gasped, an involuntary, honest sound. Elise snapped, "Don't be dramatic, dear. College tuitions are outrageous, and we insured Nolan wanted for nothing." I steadied my breath. This was the moment Dr. Gibbons had coached me for. Address the lie, name the need, hold the boundary. "You ensured I slept in an attic room above the garage. You ensured I bought second-hand textbooks because the family credit card wasn't for me. You ensured I learned to celebrate report cards alone." I spread my hands, palms up. "Tell me where the money went." No one answered. The silence grew dense, punctuated only by the faint hiss of the fireplace. Pastor Lewis closed his Bible and folded his hands, an unspoken benediction for whatever came next. Randall found his voice, soft now, as if volume could dilute guilt. "Operational expenses, home upkeep, vacations, family enrichment. Then reimburse the trust." Grandpa's voice cracked like a whip, startling even me. "You violated the spirit of the agreement and the letter of the law. Theft, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Pick your poison, son." Elise rounded on him. "We raised him. Where were you while we paid for orthodontics, school trips, health insurance? I lifted a finger. Orthodontics, never happened, school trips. I sold homemade bracelets to pay for 8th grade camp. Health insurance came from Randall's firm plan, no out-of-pocket. I paused. We can keep tallying. Kyle rubbed his temples. Dad, is any of this true? Randall looked at his children, actually looked, maybe for the first time without the filter of paternal authority. His shoulders sagged. It's complicated. Complicated, the great eraser of nuance. I opened the legal folder, revealing ready-to-file fraud complaints drafted by Davies' attorney. Not complicated, restitution. Sign these confessions, agree to mediation with the trust, and cease contact with me. Refuse, and we proceed to civil and criminal court. That's the offer. Elise's composure shattered. You ungrateful little, the phrase died when my eyes met hers unflinching. She saw Camille's eyes there maybe, and it shook her. She sat back down. Reflection question, spoken softly into the heavy room. What do you owe the people who chose not to love you? Think about that before you call someone ungrateful. Serena wiped tears, mascara streaking the perfect Instagram face. I didn't know, I swear. Her voice cracked. All those times you bylaid Kevin, sorry, Kyle, out of debt, I thought you just liked playing hero. An unexpected pang hit me. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but rescuing people is how I lost myself. Knowing starts today, I said. What you do with it is on you. Pastor Lewis spoke for the first time since recording notes. Confession is the first step toward redemption. Denial only multiplies suffering. Randall studied the pages, confession, repayment schedule, non-disparagement clause. 53 seconds ticked by, I counted them. Finally, he reached for the pen. Elise caught his wrist. We need counsel. Grandpa's reply was a low rumble. Counsel advised keeping a mother from her child, remember? How did that work out? Kyle stood abruptly. I'm done hiding. He grabbed the pen and signed both lines, witness and acceptance. He wasn't legally necessary, but symbolically he cracked the wall. Serena followed, hand trembling. Elise stared at them as if they'd switched languages. Randall's face crumpled, pride folded inward like wet cardboard. He signed. Elise held out a quivering hand, then snatched it back and crossed her arms. I exhaled, a 40-pound exhale, years waited. Elise, without your signature, we still proceed. Your choice determines whether you face us together or alone. Something flickered in her eyes, not contrition, but calculation. She signed. Her signature landed on the page like a period ending the longest sentence ever written. Lesson number 2, accountability often begins not with repentance but with pragmatism. Take what you can get. Growth may come later or never. I collected the documents, sliding them into the case. Pastor Lewis dated and initialed each page. He looked at me, a soft pride warming his tired features. Truth sets people free, but first it rearranges the furniture, he murmured. Randall cleared his throat. What now? Now, I said, closing the clasps, I leave, and you start learning how to tell your story without me as the villain. I pocketed my phone. A trust representative will contact you within 48 hours. Serena stepped forward, voice small. Nalen, can we? Not today. Boundaries are bridges you build for yourself first. Maybe one day if your apology isn't about avoiding consequences. She nodded, tears falling unchecked. Elise reached for a final jab. Your mother abandoned you. Remember that before you sanctify her. I met her gaze steady. She lost me. Difference matters. Elise looked away. Words can be walls or mirrors. She couldn't face either. Grandpa turned to leave. I followed but paused at the doorway, savoring one last inhale of lemon polish and controlled climate, symbols of a life I no longer inhabited. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger had burned off like morning fog. In its place stood a surprising serenity, a space wide enough for self-respect. Outside, rain had begun, gentle but insistent, washing the magnolia branches. Pastor Lewis peeled off toward his car, promising to email scanned copies. Grandpa and I walked side by side down the stone path. He stopped halfway, voice quavering. Proud of you, kiddo, braver than I ever was. I gripped his shoulder. You showed up. That's courage, too. A lesson I'd tuck away. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's an old man pressing play on a cassette he's dreaded for decades. The drive back felt lighter, as if the tires skimmed puddles instead of cutting through them. Grandpa stared out the window, raindrops streaking past. Think they'll change? He asked. I don't know. I signaled onto the freeway. Change isn't my project anymore. Releasing responsibility for other people's growth might be the freest feeling on earth. Remember that next time you draft a rescue plan for someone not ready to be rescued. My phone buzzed, a new email from Davies. Subject line, "Call me ASAP, Camille update." My pulse quickened, but this adrenaline felt different, anticipation, not dread. I handed the phone to Grandpa while I merged through spray-kick traffic. He read silently, lips curling into the first genuine smile I'd seen since the lake. "She knows you confronted them," he reported. "She says whenever you're ready, she's waiting at Pike Place Market, table by the window. She'll bring extra tissues and the best clam chowder in Seattle." A laugh burst from my chest, startling both of us. Chowder and tissues sounds perfect. The briefcase sat between us on the console, heavy with signatures and truths, but its weight no longer felt punishing. Evidence had done its job. Now healing could begin in a place where deception never set the rules. Grandpa adjusted the heater, rain-slick roads reflecting taillight constellations. "Seattle next." "Seattle next," I said. "But first, breakfast that isn't reheated pastries, my treat." He chuckled. "Spend your money on something that nourishes, not something that proves." I nodded, absorbing that final wisdom. Proof had served its purpose. Nourishment was the new currency. Ahead, the Bay Bridge loomed, lights shimmering on wet steel, a pathway out of one story and into another. I pressed the accelerator, feeling the old narrative fall away like water off wax. If you've ever cut ties with a toxic narrative, you know the moment. The air tastes different, the road sounds clearer, and the future hums with possibility. That hum filled the car as Oakland receded in the rearview, leaving room for a reunion waiting beneath Seattle's gray skis, room for a mother who never stopped writing my name, and for a life no longer measured by someone else's ledger. The airplane wheels squealed onto Seattle-Tacoma's rain-slick runway, and in that instant the roar of engines felt quieter than the pulse in my throat. A gray curtain of drizzle licked the window, painting the city in watercolor strokes, needle-thin skyscrapers, container cranes, ferry boats that bobbed like paper toys on Puget Sound. I used to think home was a static destination, a street, a house, a name on a mailbox. Now I realized it can be kinetic, forming at the speed of choice. Every step down the jetway rewrote the coordinates of my belonging. At baggage claim, Grandpa Harold hovered protectively near the carousel, cowboy boots tapping an anxious rhythm. The confrontation back in Oakland had aged him overnight. New grooves edged his eyes, yet his posture radiated relief, as though shedding the burden of secrecy shaved 20 pounds off his frame. I squeezed his elbow. "Last layover," I said, meaning both the flight and the 30-year detour in our family story. He nodded, swallowing whatever emotion tried to surface. A black town car waited at the curb, arranged by Camille, according to the driver holding a placard that read NOLANTHORNFILD. Seeing my legal surname for the first time outside a document sent a jolt through me. Driver's name was Aiden. He offered bottled water and a discreet silence while the city unfolded, emerald and slate, through rain-beaded glass. Grandpa stared at the Space Needle piercing low clouds and murmured, "Knew it only from postcards." I watched him seeing it, gratitude pooling in my chest. Everything I was about to experience, he would witness too. We pulled onto a cobblestone lane above Pike Place Market. Tourists shuffled under rainbow umbrellas, street musicians strummed guitars in minor keys, and the smell of salt water fused with espresso. Aiden pointed to a red brick building with arched windows. "Table by the north window," he said. "Miss Thornfield is waiting." Inside, the cafe buzzed with quiet industry, baristas steaming milk, patrons typing on laptops, indie folk humming from ceiling speakers. Sun-bleached driftwood shelves displayed jars of local honey, and there, near the glass, sat Camille. She rose as though propelled by instinct, napkin tumbling from her lap. Silver hair fell in soft waves to her shoulders, sunlight filtering through rain clouds gilded the streaks. For half a second we both froze, two strangers whose DNA recognized itself. Then the magnetic pull closed the gap. Her hug this time was less desperate than in Oakland's coffee shop, firmer breathing room between us. She held my face, thumbs brushing away raindrops that weren't rain. "You came," she whispered, voice rough from over a decade of letters that never received an answer. I managed a nod before words piled up behind gratitude and clogged my throat. Grandpa stepped forward, Camille's eyes widened. "Harold." His name escaped either as blessing or accusation, hard to tell. He removed his hat, head bowed. "I owe you an apology bigger than the mountain range out that window," he said, "but I'll start with 2 words, I'm sorry." A breath caught in her chest. Then she wrapped him in a hug that trembled with decades of confusion, sorrow, and grace all at once. Watching them, I understood forgiveness not as absolution, but as architecture, timber strong enough to carry grief without collapsing. We ordered chowder, 2 bowls, 1 extra for late-arriving tears, and toasted with mugs of dark roast. Conversation trickled, then rushed. Camille described building Thornfield Technologies from a basement startup into a clean energy powerhouse, all while setting aside time every year to hire investigators and follow the faintest trail to a boy lost somewhere in the Midwest. She slid her phone across the table, photos of me at graduations or cross-country meets, blurry telephoto glimpses Davies had managed to capture. "Proof you existed," she said. "Proof hope wasn't delusion." My chest ached at the idea that while I chased acceptance in one house, my mother was chasing me across continents. Grandpa detailed the adoption from his vantage, the promises he believed, the complicity he carried. Camille listened without flinching, tears tracing silent lines but never disrupting her gaze. When he finished, she exhaled the way people do after setting down a suitcase they forgot they were carrying. "Harold, I can't pretend it doesn't hurt," she said, steady. "But pain doesn't nullify the kindness you showed when everyone else turned their backs." She reached across the table and squeezed his weather-roughened fingers. He wept, the quiet, shoulder-shaking cry of a man startled by mercy. Lunch shift gave way to afternoon lull. The waitress refilled mugs, eyes soft with curiosity she politely kept to herself. Camille suggested fresh air. We stepped into drizzle and meandered the market stalls, fishmongers tossing salmon, artisans selling cedar bracelets, tourists snapping selfies with the bronze pig. Seattle smelled of wet earth and seaweed, a scent both new and oddly ancestral. My lungs seemed to memorize it. On an overlook above Elliott Bay, Camille handed me a keycard embossed with Thornfield's logo. "Corner office, 27th floor," she said. "Only if you want it. If not, return the card and we'll still grab brunch every Sunday." Her offer hovered between us, bright as the ferry horns echoing off the water. I remembered the vow I'd made in Oakland, no more belonging bought with shortcuts. "I'll earn my desk," I said. "Start me wherever merit starts." She grinned, pride and mischief. "Then you'll interview with my board next week like any candidate. Don't be late, they're sharks." I laughed, heart loosening. A gust swept raindrops sideways. She pulled her coat tight around my shoulders the way mothers do without thinking. That evening we toured her apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows, Scandinavian furniture, walls lined with abstract canvases she painted in insomnia bouts. One corner hosted an untouched Steinway. "I stopped playing when the boy I wrote lullabies for disappeared," she confessed. My fingers drifted across ivory keys until a half-remembered chord filled the room. "Maybe the lullabies still work," I said. She smiled, eyes shimmering. Grandpa settled into a guest suite with more square footage than his Nebraska farmhouse. Still, he placed the same framed photograph, Grandma June holding a basket of tomatoes on the nightstand. Home travels lightly for people who carry it inside. Before bed, he knocked softly on my door. "Proud of you, kiddo," he whispered. "I know I keep saying it, but every time feels like the first." I hugged him, and in the hush I felt the past loosen its grip on both our throats. Days blurred into a rhythm. Sunrise jogs along the waterfront, boardroom interviews where I defended investment theses, late-night Thai takeout on Camille's balcony while Grandpa tinkered with container garden tomatoes. The board grilled me relentlessly, Michael, the sharp-eyed general counsel, especially. He challenged my risk models until decimal points sweated. Yet when the vote came, 8 hands raised in favor, none opposed. I was the CEO's reunion project. I was portfolio manager of a new green tech venture fund, reporting to Michael, not to Mom. The title felt less like a trophy and more like an invitation to prove momentum over pedigree. Lesson I learned fast: autonomy is a muscle, use it daily or atrophy sets in. Every deal review, every site visit to a hydrogen battery startup strengthened that muscle. And every Friday I caught myself whistling on the walk home, small evidence that work, when aligned with purpose, hums instead of hammers. Sundays became ritual. Camille cooked elaborate brunches, shakshuka one week, Dungeness crab omelets the next, while Grandpa tested soil acidity on his dwarf lemon trees. Conversation stitched together stories previously exiled to silence. I admitted the attic's loneliness. Camille shared the night she almost quit searching. Grandpa quoted folk song lyrics as if they were scripture. We argued about Mariner's pitching and laughed about how none of us understood tick-tock. At dusk, when city lights ignited like scattered constellations, Camille often sat at the Steinway, hesitant. One night she pressed a single note, then another. By the third, muscle memory took over and the apartment filled with gentle melody that sounded like rain deciding to dance. Grandpa and I exchanged a look. Home can be as simple as a chord finally resolving. 3 months slipped by. My fund closed its first round at $120 million, anchored by Thornfield but diversified with outside capital, validation in hard numbers. I moved from a starter studio to a one-bedroom with a balcony of my own, but kept the thrift store coffee table as reminder that value isn't price. On nights when self-doubt lurked, I reread Camille's first letter. If you inherit nothing else, inherit my refusal to quit. It felt less like advice and more like genetic code. Mid-April brought a phone call from an Omaha area code I hadn't blocked. Sophia, I almost let it ring out, but curiosity flickered. Her voice was subdued, missing the champagne fizz I remembered. I started therapy, she said. Dr. Atkins gives homework this week. It's apologies, she inhaled audibly. I'm sorry for being blind to what you endured. I can't fix the past, but I'm selling my designer stuff and repaying the trust my share. Thought you should know. Silence pulsed between us, two satellites adjusting orbits. Finally, I said, I accept your apology. Keep doing the work for you. She thanked me, voice shaking, and hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt humane. Revenge had lost its flavor, replaced by something softer yet stronger, boundaries seasoned with compassion. Grandpa's health, once fragile, steadied. Morning walks around Green Lake lengthened from half a mile to 2 full laps. He enrolled in a pottery class, returning with uneven bowls he gifted to anyone who visited. One Saturday, I found him on the balcony teaching Camille how to pinch clay. Sunlight haloed their heads. I snapped a photo, realizing the man who once hid truths was now shaping something new with the woman he'd wronged. Redemption's texture, it turns out, feels a lot like damp earth spinning toward usefulness. May marked the soft launch of the Anchor Project, my nonprofit offering pro bono legal and investigative services to adoptees locked behind forged walls like mine once were. Camille matched my seed donation. Grandpa volunteered as liaison for rural families. Our first client, a 22-year-old named Jasmine, located her birth father in Tulsa after 2 weeks of dedicated digging. When she emailed a selfie of their reunion, a shy grin mirrored on two faces, I felt a surge of meaning no market return could match. Summer warmed Seattle. Ferries cut sun-flecked paths across the Sound. Mount Rainier presided like a resigned guardian. One July evening, Camille suggested a road trip to the Olympic Peninsula, just us. We drove Highway 101 past cedar forests and lavender farms, playlists oscillating between her 80s ballads and my indie rock. At a windswept beach, we built a driftwood fire. Waves hissed at our feet while gulls scrawled invisible letters across the sky. She handed me a thin leather journal embossed with my initials. Write your own letters, she said. Don't wait 30 years to say what matters. Pages smelled of promise. I asked if she'd like to read the first entry someday. She shook her head. Write them for you. I'll read the person you become. Stars emerged, shy but determined. I told her about my first-grade dream of becoming an astronaut. She laughed softly. I named you Nolan because it means champion. I hoped you'd conquer whichever galaxy called you. A gale tugged her hair, and in the dim glow I recognized the girl from the beach photo, still inside the executive. I realized love across distance doesn't dilute, it concentrates. Back in the city, life continued. Deal memos, board dinners, Tuesday trivia nights with new friends who liked me before they learned my backstory. Happiness didn't roar. It hummed, a reliable generator rather than a fireworks show. Yet some mornings I woke from dreams of lemon-polished corridors and attic dust, heart racing. Trauma, I learned, doesn't vanish. It settles into muscles like scar tissue. Therapy helped, so did running, music, and sharing stories on video for people who messaged. Your journey makes me feel seen. Late September, another envelope arrived, the last I expected. Handwritten return address, Randall Whitaker. Inside, a single page. He admitted misusing trust funds, claimed bankruptcy court was swallowing the remainder, and enclosed a cashier's check for $2,000, symbolic restitution, he wrote. He ended with a line that startled me. If you ever want to fish for steelhead on the Rogue River, my door is open. I set the check on my desk. Maybe one day I'd frame it as proof people can change in increments. Maybe not. Either way, the invitation felt like a man stepping from shadow into partial light. Partial was more than I expected. One crisp evening, I found myself alone on Camille's balcony, city lights shimmering. A seaplane skimmed the bay like a skipped stone. I thought of everyone who joined my story's cast. The teacher who mispronounced my name, Dr. Gibbons and her charts, Pastor Lewis with his steady pen, Sophia repeating therapy homework, Grandpa with a cassette tape that detonated a dynasty. Each played a note that eventually resolved into melody. What I wondered defines family. Is it blood, choice, truth spoken across coffee steam? Share your answer in the comments. Your definition might guide someone still walking that question. Camille stepped outside carrying 2 mugs of peppermint tea. She handed me one, then looked toward the sound where fairies stitched silver wake lines under the moon. "Do you feel free?" she asked. I considered freedom I'd discovered wasn't the absence of memory. It was the ability to move without chains of unspoken debt. "I feel in motion," I said, "and motion is close enough to flight for now." She slid onto the bench beside me, shoulder brushing mine. "Take your time," she murmured. "The sky will wait." Somewhere across the water, a ship sounded its horn, an echo passing from one shore to another. I closed my eyes, breathed the briny wind, and felt the resonance travel through rib cage, into spine, into ground. A signal answered. Home wasn't a fixed pin on a map. It was a frequency we learned to recognize inside ourselves, and once attuned, we can carry it anywhere. If your own story has taught you to redefine home, to rebuild boundaries, or to forgive in doses you can survive, drop a line below. We're all sailing in uncertain fog, but shared light keeps the channels clearer. And if no one's told you lately, you deserve a table where love is on the menu every single day. Keep searching, keep building. It's out there, waiting like sunrise behind a veil of rain.